Good morning. It's day 7 of Lent, Wednesday, March 8th. We are continuing through our study of Paul's letter to the Romans. I'm Father Patrick from St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Manhattan, Kansas. We just finished yesterday chapter 2 and kind of dipped our toe into chapter 3 of Romans, where Paul had been discussing and comparing the sin of the Jew versus the sin of the Gentile and how they argue against each other. And ultimately falling on the question, well, what value is there to being a Jew? And is there any distinction? And he says, yes, there is a distinction. And then he continues today. Today we're talking about chapter 3, verses 9 to 20. Spoiler alert, the section is called None is Righteous. What then? Are we any better off? No, not at all. For we have already charged that all, both Jews and Greeks, are under the power of sin. As it is written, there is no one who is righteous, not even one. There is no one who has understanding. There is no one who seeks God. All have turned aside together. They have become worthless. There is no one who shows kindness. There is not even one. Their throats are opened graves. They use their tongues to deceive. The venom of vipers is under their lips. Their mouths are full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Ruin and misery are in their paths, and the way of peace they have not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes. Now we know that whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are under the law, so that every mouth may be silenced, and the whole world may be held accountable to God. For no human being will be justified in his sight by deeds prescribed by the law, for through the law comes the knowledge of sin. And there we have, in verse 20 of chapter 3, our sense of what Paul's understanding of sin is. And really here, if you had to say that the letter to the Romans is about anything, it's about this question of what exactly is the power of sin and who is infected by it, it's a little early, but let's talk about our word of the day. The word of the day is right there in the first verse of this reading, chapter 3, verse 9. It's actually two words. It's hufamartion, which means under sin. The way that the New Revised Standard Version translated is both Jews and Greeks are under the power of sin, but the Greek is literally just under sin. Paul is under the impression and in the belief that every single created person, every single created being is under the power of sin, meaning that sin has some control over us or some power over us. And so the way he describes this is by describing us as under sin. And one helpful way here to think about sin is with a capital S. This is sin, kind of big sin. We have it within us. And here, as the shoe drops in verse 20 of chapter 3, he's saying, listen, no human being is righteous on their own. We all have sin, and we need some kind of outside force to help us and understand what it means to be a sinful person. We need somebody. We need God to help us with that. And that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow, actually. He jumps right in. He explains it right off. The good news is that we have some good news, and we'll hit that tomorrow. So your thought for the day today. Before we go to the thought of the day, I just want to point out as well that Paul is using Old Testament readings as a way to describe the power of sin. Here he quotes from several different Psalms. He quotes from Ecclesiastes. He quotes from Isaiah as well. All these verses that show that nobody gets it on their own, that we all need some help. So that will lead to our thought for the day. Where do you need help? Spend today thinking about, as you wake up this morning, spend some time thinking about your past 24 hours, maybe your past week. We're exactly a week into Lent now. As you've been examining your own life, where have you found that you've needed help? Where have you found that you need someone where have you found that the power of sin, that you are indeed under sin, that you have sin in your life? How do you need help? And how do you pray for that help? We'll get an answer tomorrow when Paul gives us a little bit of a preview of what we as Christians believe. Thanks for joining me on this day 7, Wednesday, March 8th. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Have a happy and holy Lent.